0800 80 1080 is the number, 9292 to text. Hi, Neil.
Hi, Roman. Probably going to come in with a different perspective here. I don't think I've ever seen such one-sided propaganda since the Iraqi war, the illegal Iraqi war, which killed 1 million people. But I don't think I've actually ever seen such propaganda. I mean, to turn around and say that Putin's a madman, he's calculating, he's evil, but he's not a madman because he's calculated this before he's even gone ahead with it. And he's causing a lot of trouble already because oil's already going through the roof. You comment many a night that many of us can hardly afford to fill our cars, and you know that's not just because of the war. That's because of the silly statements that are coming out of the West that they want to ban Russian oil. So now a lot of the petrol companies are not touching the oil, which is making prices go even higher. We've got Germany squealing because the people can't afford to cook or it's either one or the other, really. It's either got to be their heating or their cooking because at the moment it's 4 times the gas price is what it was before. And it's reckoned it'll double if everyone starts to use their food starts cooking their food. Europe is pretty much in rebellion about it at the moment. I mean, Europe is just vassal states, but
So, Neil, can I just go back a step?
Yeah.
If it's, for example, if Scott Morrison just arrived in New Zealand and started saying he wanted to take over New Zealand, you wouldn't describe that as the actions of a madman? And
if let's say another analogy we can use, if Scotland went independent tomorrow and invited the Russians in and says, we'll join your alliance, and the Scots said, we'll join your alliance and you can stick your nuclear weapons in here, pointing at the people of England, would the good people of England accept that? Well, Putin's been telling them for how long that they're not going to accept it because all the invasions of Russia always come through the plains in Ukraine. So they've been trying for 8 years. Now, I don't have the time to go right through the history lesson, how they've gone right back to 2014, an American orchestrated coup put a far-right government in that does have neo-Nazis in its ranks. Now, these people have been slaughtering the people in the west of Ukraine, the east of Ukraine, and they've killed 14,000. So, I mean, everybody's making it out as if it's just one side of the story. It's not quite that, isn't it? There's 2 sides of a story. And, you know, what beats me is in Yemen, I think it's at UN figures that something between 300,000 and 500,000 people have been killed by Saudi attacks. Now, these Saudi attacks, not only do we sell them the weapons, but the British and the Americans actually refueled their aircraft in the air, and they were caught actually directing the traffic to kill Yemens on the ground. But nobody says that, obviously, because they're not blonde hair and blue eyes. Nobody really cares.
What was that?
You know, so that's what I'm saying, the total hypocrisy of it. You know, and the absolute, you know, the propaganda. We had last week we had an old lady at 78-year-old, and she's standing there being taught how to shoot. But if you look at the insignia behind the guy who's teaching him to shoot, it is Azov Battalion. Now, the Ukrainian army is the only army on earth that allows neo-Nazi battalions to fight in their front line. Now, you'll see he had what's called the Wolf's Angel, the Wolf's, which on his insignia, and that was originally used by Das Reich, which was the Germans' brigade who went through Europe slaughtering millions of Jews and Russians and things like that. So, I mean, it really isn't as one-sided as people make. It just makes me laugh.
Well, stripping away, look, I don't even know what's fact and what's not, but you know as well as I do that this president, ex-comedian, was elected by the people. He's loved by the people. Do you think he deserves to have someone coming in to take over what is essentially the breadbasket of Europe like he's doing?
Well, Putin, I think he has only asked for 2 things. That Ukraine stays neutral on the level of Austria. I don't know if you're aware, in World War II, when the Russians took Austria at the end of the war, they agreed to give it back to the West, that it remained neutral and didn't go into NATO in 1955. Right, so that's what Putin has said to him. You don't go into NATO, and your country will be back, and we'll sort out an arrangement out for the people in the East And they won't get Crimea back because the majority of people in Crimea don't want to go back to Ukraine. They want to stay with Russia. So I think a simple referendum would do there. But at the same time, as I said, you know, they're not even taking into account Russia as a superpower, but nobody even seems interested in seeing it from their point of view. And as I said, Americans wouldn't allow Mexico, Russians to stick nuclear weapons into Canada or Mexico, would they? No, they wouldn't. But all these double standards seem to come in, doesn't it? Now, we're heading now for... anybody with a brain can see that if we continue in this path, we're going to be in World War III. There's no... You can see it as blatant as the sun coming up in the morning. Now, either we do something about it and try and get this stopped, or the world is going to be destroyed. Because
what you're saying then is that because of the determination and from your point of view justification from Russia that the Ukraine needs to capitulate.
No, I'm not saying that, but they've got to come to terms with it. And you know, we're told this thing. One of the things that gets me is we're told, oh, Ukrainians are shooting. There's a guy that shot down 6 aircraft in one day. It wasn't. It was a computer simulation they were using. You know, in the war, some of the aces you'd be an ace after about 3 or 4 kills, and you'd probably take about 9 months to get that. But we're told that this guy gets it in one day. You know, it's just, a lot of it is just nonsense that's coming out. If you understand how the Russians fight, what they have done is, if you go and look at a military map of what's happening in Ukraine at the moment, you'll see they've come in from the north, they've come in from the east, and then the Belarus, and they've come in from the south. They've got their barrier between them and Crimea. They've already surrounded the Ukrainian armies in the east, and they've surrounded Kiev. Now, if you remember back to Czechoslovakia, that's exactly what they did as well. And you won't remember, that was in 1968. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's what they did in Syria in Syria when they were fighting the ISIS and the Al-Qaeda. They surround the cities and they send them a shell every so often to remind them you're surrounded. But what they did at the end of the day, they let them negotiate a way out. They say, okay, we take the city, get this thing sorted out, and you can go head up any way you like and do what you like. And then most of them ended up with the piece of land where America has taken, the United States has taken off Syria to the oil fields there, which they're illegally selling. You'll find most of the ISIS and Al-Qaeda fighters are all around there. I mean, not many people know that the British Army trains Al-Qaeda in Syria. You can go and Google that and you'll find that they do. Al-Nusra, they train them. So we're supposed to be fighting Al-Qaeda, but we're actually training them. Right? So this is a total hypocrisy that's coming out of the West. And as I say, if it doesn't stop, we're going to end up in World War III. And it's really whether we want to live or whether we don't. And it's that simple now. Because Putin I think he's evil. I think he's calculating. I think he's cunning. He's not mad. But one thing he is determined. And that is, he is determined that they're not going to go into NATO.
Yeah, well, this is the frightening thing, isn't it, Neil? The frightening thing. And thank you for the call.